to absorb tonight. And thank everybody for coming. Make sure you have cookies, there's punch, there's coffee. And we have our mayor that's here, and Denny from Denny College. We have our new, it's not chief of police anymore, is it?
Public safety
stand and introduce yourself?
Public safety.
Right here. Public safety director.
This is Jeff Lewis. I didn't see Jeff here, ladies and gentlemen. Jeff just started on January 3rd for the city of Muskegon. Thank you, Elvis. Just told me I could go ahead, so that was nice for him.
Good now.
Thank you, Elvis. Well, the city of Muskegon, let me tell you, the city of Muskegon is very, very fortunate to have Jeff come on board. Jeff has been the chief of police over in Milan, Michigan for 7 or 8 years.
6 years.
6 years. Prior to that, he spent 20 years or so with the Ypsilanti Police Department. Comes with a good, broad-based background that fits our community well. He's a regular guy. Chooses to make the city of Muskegon his home. I told him the other night at the city commission meeting, thank him for taking an interest in our community, willing to move his family over here, and I'm proud to say that he's making Muskegon his home. So we're glad to have Jeff here. He's got bringing some new, fresh ideas into our community. He's been great to work with at this point, and I'm sure that's going to continue. So Jeff, we're glad to have you on board.
Thanks, man.
What an interesting night. I want to thank you very, very much for coming out. This is the largest group I've been before at the Lakeside Neighborhood Association, and the other night I was at the Campbell, and Harold was here at Neighborhood Association on Monday night, and that was a large group for Campbell Neighborhood at that time. So I'm pleased to see that as a community we're taking an interest in our neighborhoods and our community. Now I was telling Doug Melchi, who is the new owner of the former Sappy property, who'll be making a presentation too. But I was telling him I'd like to have seen an auditorium filled with our neighborhood, but this is a great, great start. So I want to wish you all a happy new year. I want to thank you for being here tonight. I want to share with you how we really came to this point. Many of you may have read in the newspaper, there was a task force that was formed early last June. And that came about because of a request from the Muskegon Chronicle for me to come and talk with them about what the city's plans were, what we were going to do about the shootings that had been happening in our community. And many of you will remember the summer of 2010 was just awful for loss of life in our community. And it seemed in the spring of 2011 that it was beginning to start the same way. Fortunately, what precipitated that call, I believe, was the gunshots that were fired down at Pier Market. And fortunately, since that time, we really haven't had those types of shootings. Yes, we just had a killing up in the Campbell neighborhood here just a couple of weeks ago, drug-related. But what we were seeing is at least slowed down. I don't think we're naive to believe that it's gone away. When I went to that meeting, and there's a few of the folks here in the Lakeside Neighborhood Association that heard me say this back in December, I didn't really know what I was going to tell them. I could bring them up to date on what a couple of groups had been doing as far as trying to work on some of the social issues and some of the shootings that were going on in our neighborhood. But I certainly didn't have a solution to the problem. While I was thinking about it that weekend when I was going to go before them, I realized that I was like most of us in this room, and that was, I was just hoping that the problem would go away, that everything would get better. And it wasn't. So we put together a task force, and we're working on a lot of different things. For young people to get to the point where they are, where they're beginning to carry guns and begin to shoot at each other, there's no easy solution. There's a lot of different areas that we need to touch socially to help these young people. I said when I was giving an update to the city commission, anyone who's gotten into this kind of trouble where they're beginning to carry guns and they're fighting over what you and I would consider to be very stupid things, is because of the way they've been brought up. You know, when they were born, they were to somebody, everybody's the prettiest baby that was ever born. And they grow up to be what they are based at no fault of their own. It's their lot in life, in most cases, as to how they've been brought up. So we've got a lot of areas that we need to work on as a community. And we're going to work on them as a community, but they're all going to take time. But through that, when I decided that, you know, I was hoping it would go away, I came to the realization that the problem was all of ours. Now, we may not have any shootings in the Lakeside neighborhood at this point in time, but we may have a rash of car break-ins. A lot of our neighborhoods have a lot more rental properties in them than they did 10 or 15 years ago. So we have a lot more transient people that are beginning to move in. The point of this neighborhood awareness program is what we're calling it in the city of Muskegon, is to begin to reconnect with our neighbors. Look, we got such a diverse crowd, but there's a lot of folks in here, and I apologize to Ken Powers and Chief Lewis, who I'm going to have to listen to this about 20 times come out of my mouth as I say it, but I remember when we shut the lights out at night to go to bed as a youngster and even into my early adult age, and you didn't lock your house. I remember you could leave your car in the driveway with keys in it and go to bed. I remember that all of the neighbors knew each other. If you drove down the road, you waved to each other. If you were a youngster, you didn't want to do anything wrong, afraid that one of the neighbors would tell your parents if you did something. Well, those days, I'm sorry to say, are pretty much over. We certainly recommend that everybody lock the doors in their house, lock the cars, take the keys in it, keep any valuables that you may have to leave in your car hidden. A lot of us are looking the other way. We don't wave to a neighbor unless we know them. In most cases, even open our windows in the summertime and the screens and go to bed because we're afraid somebody will cut the screen and break into our house. And it doesn't matter what neighborhood we live in, that thought is in our mind. Remember when it used to be the picket fence around the house? Now what we have is 6 foot high, what I call security fences. You can't see that. Well, a lot of that is because we all want our own privacy from our neighbors in a certain sense. But a lot of it has to be because we don't want somebody that has easy access to come get our lawn furniture or grill that we may have outside. So we need to begin to reconnect with our neighbors. And it's our responsibility, each and every one of us, if we begin to come together as neighbors, the neighborhood becomes safe because we have this feeling of getting to know each other a little trust. We begin to watch out for each other. We know if something's out of place. Now, if we're just driving down the road, we're not paying attention to what our neighbors are. We may know 1 or 2 cars, but we're not thinking if a car is there that might be out of the ordinary. We don't know our neighbor well enough, perhaps, to call them up. You know, when I say that, I know a lot of the folks that are in here have been lifelong Lakesiders. We don't find that in every neighborhood. But I'm sure over time the neighbors have changed. We don't welcome our neighbors. Used to be, and maybe some of you do, I'm not saying that, but most of us don't. Used to be somebody new moved in the neighborhood, you might bring them over a few cupcakes or whatever and welcome the neighborhood. It doesn't seem to happen anymore. Each one of our neighborhoods has its own distinct traits, have different churches from different denominations. Some of our neighborhoods have business areas. Some are primary business. Over on the east side, East Muskegon is pretty much a business neighborhood. Some have more parks than others, types of parks that we have. So we're different. And we need to show our individuality in our neighborhoods, but we need to still continue to be neighbors. Now, years ago, there was a program out that was called the Neighborhood Watch Program. I don't know if any of you were familiar with it. We used to do that in the city of Muskegon. It's done across this country. It is a very, very effective program in cutting down crime. It's public safety director Lewis, but I just out of habit call chief because he's still chief to me. Chief Lewis made a point the other night that if you're friendly with your neighbors, say somebody moves in, and perhaps they're of an element that you wouldn't want in your neighborhood, they're criminals. If they know that they're moving into a neighborhood where people are friendly and people are watching what other people are doing, and you reach out to them and say, this is a friendly neighborhood and we take care of each other, in all likelihood, they're going to move. Because they don't want people watching what they're doing. So what I've asked Denny Powers to do and the police department to do is come out to each of our neighborhoods with me as I ask each and every one of us to begin to become involved in our neighborhoods and take a leadership role in making our neighborhoods more positive than what they are. So he's going to share with you what the Neighborhood Watch program, how it's been, I'm not trying to say anything, but the success that we've had with it. We're hoping that everyone here will want to get involved in some neighborhood. He's going to take you through how small it can be to how large it can be and how encompassing it can be. And each neighborhood is going to be different as to what activities that they want to do, but the important thing is that we get people involved and we become neighbors again and we watch out for each other. So I'm going to ask Denny if he would come up here and just share a few things on the Neighborhood Watch program. There's steps. You know what I'm going to do?
You got the helpers coming out.
You were the business.
I wasn't expecting this big of a crowd, so hopefully y'all can hear me. The mayor said the Neighborhood Watch is it's basically the neighborhood looking out for itself and working together with the police department. Because the police department, no matter what we do, we go out there from call to call to call to call. Crime is not going to come to a zero standstill, and it never will. And we really need to work together as neighbors.
Hold on. I just have any goals that I didn't
Sorry, that's okay. I know that nowadays the mayor has gone over this a little bit already, but we have a lot of people who don't know who their next door neighbor is. They might recognize their face, but they never talk to them. Or you might know one or two, but you don't know the rest of the people on the block. And if we really try to accomplish this Neighborhood Watch, is getting to know your neighbors so you know when something's out of place. Otherwise, you'll never report it. And it doesn't even have to be a crime event. It could be you have an elderly person that lives next to you, that you see them leave 2 or 3 times a week, and all of a sudden you see no activity. Well, you've got your Neighborhood Watch going on, and you've got your contact list because you've got a block club, and you all have your contact information for your neighbors. You can look that number up and try and call inside the house if you get an answer. If you don't, you've got their emergency contact. If that doesn't work and all else fails, you dial 911. And the same thing happens with suspicious activity as far as you've got a house where back in the alley there's a vehicle you have never seen there before. So you go through your contact list and you call the person at work.
Thank you, sir.
And you say, hey Joe, there's this, whatever it happens to be, whatever vehicle in your backyard behind your shed. Do you recognize that value? Oh, that's Cousin Joe. Well, you're all set. If he tells you, no, I've never heard of that vehicle or seen that vehicle before, your next call is 911. But Neighborhood Watch can be very simple. They can be just a couple of watch groups that are just a block long that just agree to come together once a month and talk about anything that's going on in the neighborhood, anything suspicious, but they agree to share their information, their phone numbers, their emergency contact information. From there, you can go to a full-blown neighborhood watch type of thing where you've got all blocks covered and you've got a coordinator for the entire neighborhood association. Now, what I would point out is that this is neighborhood driven and it's a neighborhood program, even though the police department will be involved with you. We'll come out and give you crime stats, we'll talk to you about home security, but it has to be neighborhood driven. And one thing that most people will realize, you've got these large neighborhoods now, say downtown neighborhoods like Nelson, McLaughlin, where you've got so many residential blocks compacted into a small area. The neighborhood officer can't possibly go to every single block club meeting every month, because if there was 50 block clubs formed in the neighborhood, he'd never be doing anything else except for going to meetings. So basically, you have to have somebody that's going to be the block captain for your block area. And that person needs to attend the monthly neighborhood association meetings. That's their forum to actually go and share information with the rest of the block clubs about the suspicious activity they've been seeing. It's a chance for the officer to tell them what's going on in the neighborhood, what to be on the lookout for. We've been having a problem with this one particular vehicle that's been seen doing some activity. And then you go back and you share it with your own block club people. Now, a block club or a block watch area does not have to be one block long. It can be 4 square blocks. It can be front and back. As long as you agree on the area and you can physically see those areas from your house. You don't want it to be so large that you can't keep an eye on it or you lose track of it. Because the whole point is that you're familiar with the activity and what's suspicious and what's not suspicious. Okay? So there's no defined area. And I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail about the different neighborhood watch, because what we'll do is we're going to invite you tonight to express your interest. And I believe I've got a sign-up sheet that I will leave here with Eloise for people who are interested in Neighborhood Watch. Without making a commitment, say, yes, I want to be a block captain, just express an interest, and we'll have another meeting where we'll actually dig into the specifics about forming a Neighborhood Watch. The mayor had alluded to success stories. We've had Neighborhood Watches on and off for years in Muskegon. And generally what you'll see is that they start coming up when you have a rash or a crime spree going on in a particular neighborhood. After 2-3 years, things calm down, nothing seems to be happening, it tends to wane off. So what I would suggest when you have neighborhood watches, to get those people in those block clubs involved in other activities in your neighborhood association, whether it's a cleanup project or something they can come together on a regular basis, because the whole point is to be proactive to keep the crime from happening, not to react to the crime afterwards. As far as success stories, we've had in Muskegon 3 mobile neighborhood watches, which is the extreme for neighborhood watch. Normal neighborhood watch, you all take your information and you know who your neighbors are. Mobile patrol, where you actually go out and you actually drive the streets and you have a group of people. Now, we do have some stipulations on that because we don't want people getting in harm's way. So if we're going to participate in a mobile watch, there will be an agreement between the police department and the watch itself, because we can't have people out there putting themselves in harm's way. Basically, you're just eyes and ears. You stay in the car, you get on the radio, and you make your phone call. But just an example, Sheldon Park and Oakview started their neighborhood watches together. It's been a number of years ago as a reaction to a bunch of B&Es that they had. It took 1 month, and their numbers went down 60%. I mean, the B&Es just went whoosh. And it's just a matter of visibility. That we're pushing the crime somewhere else. Occasionally you'll catch somebody, which is a good thing, you put them away. But the main thing is we don't want them in our neighborhoods. But the police department can't do it themselves. It has to be us. It can't be the police and, we're over here, the police are over here. We have to work together in one unit. It's our city, it's our neighborhoods. Okay? So I'm not going to go into a whole lot more detail. I know you've got another presenter here, but I'm going to leave this sign-up sheet here, and I don't know if the mayor wants to close up with some remarks. But we'd like to have you show an interest in this. It's not a commitment that, yes, I'm going to be a block captain or I'm going to be the coordinator for the entire neighborhood, but just some interest. And then we'll have a follow-up meeting for that.
Actually, what we want is we want everybody to sign. I mean, very honestly, thank you very much for caring enough to come out tonight, that you care enough about your community. Care enough to put your name and number down. You can always say no if you get a call, but this is a way for us to get a hold of you to let you know when that next meeting is going to be. Because we're going to have a next meeting. If we only start with 3 people, we're going to stop. Because we have to. we need to begin to get these to go now, and let me tell you the reason why. You're very much, before I do that, first of all, I was neglecting not introducing your ward commissioner, Byron Turnquist. Byron, would you please stand up and wave to your constituent? Byron Turnquist was newly elected and started to serve at the 1st of January. And I also want to introduce your community officer, Josh DeHoe, who's been around for a while. But Josh is your community guy that if you call your neighborhood officer, this is the gentleman that's going to get back to you on any issues or questions that you may have. So I'm going to pass this around so that we all begin to sign this. But let me tell you that you're very much aware that revenues for local governments have been dropping over the last few years. A lot of it has to do with what we're getting back from the state as far as revenue sharing. Some of it has to do with the drop of values in property tax, so we're not getting as much in property tax back. We are a community that has a city income tax, fortunately, for the city government, unfortunately, for those of us who pay it. But, and that's been holding fairly stable, subject to go up or to go down. The city commission that we've had over the last 10 years that I've served with has been very oriented towards public safety. You know, we used to have a, what was Rick Scott's department?
Leisure services.
Leisure services, thank you. I was going to say Parks and Recreation. We don't have leisure services. It's not that we didn't think it was important, but it wasn't as important as police, fire, sewer, and water. So you begin to have to make cuts. We're very, very fortunate to have community officers for our community. That is, we're just not a blanket. Their focus is on their neighborhoods. Now, I will tell you, in the last year, Josh has had to take on a couple more neighborhoods than what he had a year ago. Not because we shrunk the size of the community officers that we have in the department. It was because we had some crime issues within the community. So we could take some of those officers, pinpoint them in an area. If we've got a rash of car break-ins in Lakeside, we can bring 3 or 4 people in here when we know what's happening and begin to try to catch what's going on. Hopefully, we'll always be able to have community officers. But the reality is, 3 years from now, we face the possible closing, and right now, the likelihood closing of the cog plant. Who pays the most taxes to the city of Muskegon? COG. To our public school system, to the county of Muskegon. Whoever is in an elected position at that point in time when that happens is going to have some difficult decisions to make if that revenue isn't coming from somewhere else. So if there is the need to take a few police officers and say a few retire and we don't fill those positions, in all likelihood, it's going to come from the community officers. So that we can continue to have the patrols on the street that we need on the street. So it's one of the reasons why we need to get involved in our neighborhoods now. Because if we wait until things get where we really want it and we don't have community policing, we're not going to have the people like Denny and Josh to come out here to work with us on getting this going. Once we get it going, we can maintain it ourselves. So I'm asking you to please sign that. Please give a contact number for Eloise. You're not going to sell the list to anybody, are you? So they can call me.
Sure, she'll put it on the computer.
Okay. So hopefully we'll see all of you. Share this with your neighbors. Please share it with them so that we can get the more people we have involved, the less work it is for all of us. It's that simple. One other thing I'm going to talk about before the other group comes up is 211. One of the things that the task force discovered is that there's a lot of people that need services in our community. And we're a community that's very fortunate to have a lot of services available to us. I found, because I'm in an elected position, that a lot of people ask me questions as to where do I go to get this, or what do I do about this, and to be perfectly frank with you, as smart as I know you folks think I am, I don't have those answers. 211. Then he was talking about 911. That's the most important 3 numbers that we need to know, because if we're going to call it, it's because it's an emergency and we need help now. 211 is the second most important number that we needed to memorize. And that's because this number has all the details of all of the services that are available, where you can get them. On the back of the card, dialing 211 can connect you to local services such as food resources, housing assistance, services for seniors, utility assistance, mental health services, health supportive services, free tax preparation. Now, see, everybody should call 211 tomorrow morning.
No.
Oh, pardon me, except for the...
What?
Yeah, where is that at?
Liberty Tax Service?
Other than Liberty Tax Service. Prescription health, transportation services, and more. I'm going to leave these cards up here rather than pass them around. I know 211 is easy to remember, but if you take this with you, perhaps you use it in a conversation with somebody else. If someone comes up to you and says their grandmother, their sister, their daughter, someone is having an issue, do you know where I should go? Simply tell them to call 211.
Steve, and 211 is located at the Tanglewood Center.
211 is located in Norton Shores, and we all know it should be located in the city of Muskegon. So, with that, again, I'm very impressed by the turnout. Please share this message with your neighbors. Let's get involved. It's going to make it safer for our kids. I know that there's many parents in this room that shudder if their kids are walking to school because they're not certain what's going to happen. And we don't have to worry about those type of things if we all look out for each other. And that's what it's all about. Harold?
Yes, I'd like to say something. I'm Harold Keel from Cambridge Neighborhood Association, and we had our meeting on Monday. That's the first I've heard about that shooting. So that was in my neighborhood, and last night we had quite a bit of action in my neighborhood too. And it happened to be my neighbor's kid, and we had a high-speed chase through the neighborhood, and it was something to do with a shooting in the Heights. So it's moving over this way, and we've already got, we're going to start the 12th with our neighborhood watch, but I suggest it's something that's starting over there, and it won't be long before it's over here. So I suggest everybody is involved with it. We are.
I got one more thing before we close, and it's really kind of sort of related to neighborhood watch, but not really. Has anybody seen these blue cards before? We've had them around for years, and we take an opportunity every once, a couple times a year, to put them in the boxes of the neighborhood associations. But you can get these down at the post office. And what this is, it doesn't take the place of, if you feel comfortable talking to your neighborhood officer and you see suspicious activity, first thing we want you to do is talk to the neighborhood officer and let him know about it. But this is really an anonymous card for anybody who wants to remain anonymous and doesn't want to make direct contact with the police department. It's not for 911 emergencies, but if you've got some suspicious activity, this goes directly to a P.O. box that only I check every day. And if it's narcotics related, it goes to the narcotics people. If it's related to something the neighborhood officer would deal with, it would go to the neighborhood officer. But what we don't want you to use these cards for is that you see somebody driving down the street and their headlights out, and you're going to write this down there, because we can't do anything with that when we get this 2-3 days later, okay? This would be suspicious activity like you see cars coming in and out of a residence, or you see hand-to-hand exchange going on that you suspect is drug activity that you want to let us know about, but you don't really want to talk to the police, or you don't want to talk to your neighborhood officer or whatnot. That's what these are for. You just fill it out, very simple, don't have to put your name on it, give us as much information as you can. There's blocks for everything on there, and you just stick it in the mail.
I have a question. If you think there's a drug-related business in your neighborhood, do you call the Josh or the police department or WeMet?
We met actually all of those. And depending on how comfortable you are, if you're not comfortable talking to the police, which some people aren't, silent observer. And actually their phone number is on this card as well. But if you gave drug information to Josh, it would filter its way to WeMet anyway. And vice versa, we have a sergeant from our department that works on WeMet, that he would get that information back to the neighborhood officer. So they would share that, but any of those is good. Okay? And again, if you're comfortable talking to the police, we'd rather get it direct so we can ask you and get specifics. But if you're not comfortable, that's what these cards are for. And I'm going to leave the stack up here. And what I suggest you do is you just take one card and you put it by your phone. That way, when you're looking out your window and you see something, you have it right there to jot something down. If you run out of these cards, you can go down to the main post office downtown. They're always there where the certified receipt mailing things are at. We keep stacks down there. But like I said, a couple times a year, we try to bring this back up to the neighborhood associations. Okay?
Kenny, thank you very much. Eloise, do you want me to introduce these folks, or you want to do it?
Do you know Andy?
Do I know Andy? Boy, Andy and I've had a few years in our life together.